The world is changed. I feel it in the water. Much that once was is lost. For none now live who remember it.
Chapter 1. One to rule them all. A history lesson.
What are we doing?
This is spoiler.
Welcome, everyone. This is Spoilers. We're going to do this crazy deep dive into Fellowship of the Ring. We're really pumped about it. I'm really pumped about it. Before we get into too much of what that's going to look like and be, I wanted to just say, Brett, you are one of my closest friends in real life, and I know that Lord of the Rings runs deep for both of us.
Yeah. My dad is always been really into it. He rereads it all the time. He re-listens to it on audiobook. He doesn't like the movies because he can't separate the two.
Whoa.
So, I know some people are like that. And yeah, I just grew up. I read the books in 7th grade. I've been reading stuff all week, deep diving. I'm pumped to do this. It's going to be really fun.
So were you born into the world with some LOTR knowledge in your RDNA, maybe even?
I think so. I would say definitely just a little bit on my dad's side.
And Pappy, creator of Spoilers, introduce yourself, and can you tell us all what we're maybe in for as we start recording Fellowship tonight?
Yeah, this is Pappy. I don't know if I was the creator of Spoilers. A lot of us came together and had the same idea, but we've done multiple movies in one episode before. We've had a couple of great collections, like Brett and I did every Best Picture, Stevie, Pixie Bomber, and myself did every Disney movie, but this time I'm going to do multiple episodes on one movie. So going to kick off 2020 with something different, but don't worry, all of your favorite spoiler episodes and movie review episodes aren't going away. It's just something to mix it up, keep it spicy.
It has been a while since we've recorded the movie game thread, but we're going to continue on with that, right?
Turner and Hooch is coming soon. Don't worry.
And that laugh you heard
Thank
there
God.
is Stevie. Stevie, you're actually going to be in charge of episode 2 that we're going to record right after this.
I am.
I think you've probably watched about 20 hours of Lord of the Rings this week, catching up on the director's commentary and the actor's commentary. Are you doing okay? Are you in a good headspace for all this?
I'm in a really good headspace. I've never read any of the books, and I think that's probably a good thing. I just love these movies. I think it represents all of what, quote-unquote, movie magic is. When you listen through these commentaries and go through, behind the scenes, there was so many years of work of just preparation for these films that when it comes to life, it's just an absolute joy to watch.
Agreed. And Mikey, you're a little bit of a wild card for me. I don't know what you think about these films, but knowing that you're a fan of what Stevie just mentioned and the practical effects, I got to assume that you at least appreciate them?
Definitely. I said earlier that I had watched an hour of this extended cut because we're chopping it up into a couple episodes here, but after that first hour, I was like, I should just watch all 4 hours of this right now, and just because I was enjoying it so much. I'd probably seen all 3 movies probably 4 or 5 times, so I've seen it a lot, but I haven't watched it for a couple of years, and just going back and watching it today, I was like, wow, this still looks really, really good.
Yeah. You know it's good if Mikey likes it because he's said before that no good movies are longer than 2.5 hours. So
Mikey has time for Lord of the Rings, but not least but last, Corey, what I always remember about you in this movie is that you told me once that with your other podcasts that you were really apprehensive about ever covering this movie and trying to do it justice. So are you nervous right now?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about with Lord of the Rings because not only do we have these great and really long movies, there's so much lore in the universe. It did so much for fantasy in general, and there's books about the books, there's whole languages. There's really so much to cover, but as far as how I feel about it, I really do love Lord of the Rings. The books and the movies, though I do like the movies more. It's It's just classic fantasy.
I love it. So, again, this is Josh. I'm recording out of Goshen. And like I said earlier, I have the first chapter, and it's basically the history lesson of Middle-earth and of the ring itself, which I hope we get into some ring lore later because the ring really confuses me. I think that there might be nanotechnology involved, but let's talk about that in future episodes. What I want to get into here to hear, though, is just this intro and this exposition dump. Stevie, you like movies with exposition dumps that are like text on screen, maybe like Legend? So
I do.
Peter Jackson doesn't use any text here. Can you describe just the style of this first like 7 minutes of the movie? In the extended edition, that is.
In the extended edition, so when they originally shot this, the movie was going to begin in the Shire. And when he went back to the studios and gave them all the footage, they said, no, we need a prologue like now. And so they were shooting this while he was editing the movie. And really it's about kind of the lore of the ring itself. And the Lord of the Rings really is Sauron.
Yes.
And now he was the great deceiver.
Or Frodo.
What's that? Yeah, way before Frodo.
It's
This
definitely
is
Sauron.
No, or Frodo, I said.
Yeah, but
It's arguable.
No, it's Sauron's the Lord of the Rings, dude. He is the Lord of the Rings.
I mean, he wrote about it and everything.
Yeah. And so, it's way before this, and how it was the Great Ring, and how, you have this giant battle, with Sauron, and it looks like a bunch of elves and Elrond. And also you have Cate Blanchett, who we haven't seen yet, probably went for another 2 hours narrating all of this.
Which I love. She's great at it.
Mass chaos, mass pandemonium. You don't know who's fighting who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. But
Dogs and cats living together.
That's a really good broad overview.
Mass hysteria.
But I would just point out at the very beginning, it's merely speech over black video. And then Pappy, almost similar to what we saw in Frozen 2 with Elsa on a black background. There are these shots of the elves and the dwarves and men with just like a blank background. Like, did you appreciate that on a rewatch?
No, I loved it on the rewatch, and I loved it on the first time too. And I think that what's really significant about this opening montage is this was make or break for the whole fantasy genre in a lot of ways. Like, almost if this opening montage doesn't go well, you could draw a dotted line and say there's no Game of Thrones, which may have been for better or worse. But it was like everyone's kind of first foray, and like if it doesn't explain dwarves and elves and this mystical ring well, like people are gonna check out right away. So especially on this rewatch, it brought back a lot of warm nostalgia of watching it for the first time.
Yeah, I gotta say, having not seen it for a while, I was really kind of I forgot how it started, so I was like kind of concerned, like, oh, I don't really remember any context. And that first 10 minutes, it really kind of explains it all. It's really, really good at what it does. And you immediately know how powerful this ring is and who was in control of it. And it takes you to the time of Frodo after that. It's a really good intro.
I have in my notes that I just felt like the information was organized in a very clean and effective way. And it's just informative without being overly confusing or complex like we've seen in a lot of other movies, I think. And it somehow avoids the cheese too. I'd like to toss it open to the group. Like, how do you think it even does that?
Well, first of all, I'd say there was like no, like, to speak on your point, there were no wasted words. Like they used as small of amount of words as possible to tell you everything you needed to know so it doesn't get sloppy. And I think you're dead on with that. Just, but I think
really
there's
efficient.
no cheese. Yeah, efficient is a perfect word.
And it's also hard to undersell like how that opening battle. I'm not as versed in the lore as you guys. Does that battle have a name or anything that they show?
The Last Alliance of Men and Elves, I think, as they refer to it.
Like that, the use of CG, like I said, at that point in time was unprecedented to create an army like that, and it it looks incredible. And I know that opening shot where like the orcs are rushing all the elves, and the elves like kind of raise their whatever it is bow staff like across the line as they like break on the front line. Like it looked good in it, and I think it still looks really good. Actually,
I have a question for the camera people or whatever. There's one scene that always sticks out to me. It's really subtle. I'm sure everyone probably noticed it, but when Elrond's ordering the arrows to be shot, and they all shoot, and then one flips by his head and his hair flips. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Is that special? Is that special effects? Is that practical? I mean, it looks amazing.
That's special effects.
How did they get his? I mean, I guess it would be easy, but it's just such an awesome detail.
That's why it's so shocking to me that this intro is some sort of tacked on thing, like Stevie was saying earlier.
Well, yeah, so it was kind of crazy. Initially, it was going to be a 2-minute exposition dump when Gandalf is telling Frodo about the ring. They were going to cut to this. It was only going to be 2 minutes. And then they're like, no, that doesn't work at all. And so they're going to put it in the beginning of the film, and they only had 2.5 minutes. And Peter Jackson fought like hell, and he said, if I'm going to do this, I want to go back to what captivated me as a child, and they were James Bond movies. Every James Bond movie starts off with a massive action sequence. And he goes, if I'm going to bring this giant world, if I'm going to bring, broad people that haven't read these books into this giant world, I need to suck them in right away. And the only way I know how to do that is with the giant action sequence.
Like Indiana Jones.
Like the Gladiator.
Yes.
Yeah.
like Drive.
Yeah.
Indeed. A lot of good movies do that, huh? I see.
Like Los Enchiladas.
Get it? Oh, gosh. Ice Pirates. We already did Swords and Shields episode. We got to get that out of the way. So, I think kind of another thing that's interesting to me here is that Sauron, his whole master plan here, back to the very beginning, is it gives like the elves, I think 5 rings, the dwarves 7.
3.
Please continue to correct me. I don't want to hurt any
That's
nerds'
fine.
feelings.
I'm not trying to be a dick. 3 for the elves.
How many dwarves?
I think 7.
How many
7
men?
to the dwarf lords.
9.
Okay, and to the men who desire above all else power.
Yeah, he knew they'd be the easiest to corrupt. He corrupted them first.
It's interesting that what he imbued, the biggest thing he imbued into these rings is the power to govern their people.
9 rings were gifted to the race of men, who above all else desire power. For within these rings was bound the strength and will to govern each race. But they were all of them deceived.
And Pappy, did you hear that at all? Like, what does that mean to you?
I mean, I've never understood what the role of the other rings were. Like, I know that's what turns the men into Nazguls, right? It's like those are the...
Eventually, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a long con.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, I love Lord of the
Is
Rings.
this supposed to be evil right off the bat? Are these original 9 guys gonna use it just to control people in the first place? Was that the plan?
I think it's like 9 Boromirs, basically.
He eventually corrupts like all the kings and all of their people. So, I mean, they were really easy, and he knew they'd be easy because, like Josh was kind of joking about earlier, they want power, and he knew they'd be the easiest to corrupt. And the other ones didn't really work as well as he would have hoped, but it kind of.
Sauron's like, hey guys, friendship bracelets.
No, Josh, to your question though, like I've never understood like what the function of those rings would be. Like the main ring, it's like immortality and invisibility. Are those the extent of its powers?
I don't. First of all, it doesn't like. It's not designed to make Sauron invisible.
Right.
He's a shapeshifter, and he's extremely powerful. He's like a sorcerer. So it just, I don't know why it affects the other people that way, but the dwarves just ended up going in their mines, and all they cared about was gold, and the elves at the last minute found out what was going on, and the rings held no power over them.
I always thought that like the one ring gave powers in different ways to whoever had it. Like in the Lord of the Rings universe, there's like kind of like varying degrees of powerful people. There's like Gandalf, who's really powerful. He's a wizard, obviously, and there's Sauron. And then there's like little people like hobbits. To them, I think it just makes them invisible, but I don't know. I think if you gave it to Gandalf, he'd be able to do a lot more with it, or like
Yeah, but-
Galadriel, someone like that.
Don't tempt
Yeah, but
him.
they're all terrified of it though.
I think they might be able to do some good with it for a while. But like the
Yeah.
whole point of the
Yeah.
ring is like eventually it's going to corrupt you and then it's going to make you the evilest. So maybe Gandalf would just be the new Sauron host, kind of.
That was Saruman's plan. He was
Right.
going to try to double cross Sauron in the end. So yeah, I know I'm getting a little too deep into the books, but
Christopher Lee even said that.
Yeah, he delves out these rings. Stuff starts going south for the entire planet, which is called Middle Earth. I don't know why. It's the second age of Middle Earth right now. Whatever. But there's a huge battle. It's like the battle end all battles. Mikey, Stevie kind of gave us a brief overview of it, but can you remember kind of the main characters here involved in this hugely important battle for Middle Earth?
No, I don't really know the names. The names are so crazy in this, this franchise. King of Gondor, is that what I'm seeing here? Or?
Exact names aside, like what's kind of the point of the happenings at the battle? What goes down?
yeah, the Battle of Dagorlad.
So we have the humans versus Sauron, and Sauron is just tearing everybody up. He looks unstoppable. He's like twice as big as everybody, and like Kylo said, he's like a wizard, right? Brett is he not a wizard?
He's not a wizard, but they're called Mire. It's the same thing as Gandalf. There's just different. He's like the most powerful Maya. Like Maya is singular, and
yeah,
they're different, but they're the same subspecies of people.
he's
so
really
yeah,
powerful.
yes, he's
the
he's been
humans-
around for a long time.
Yeah, the humans are really on their last bet here, and
And elves.
the king of the humans, I don't know his name, sorry, but he gets tossed.
Elendil.
He gets tossed against a rock, and he's kind of down for the count. And his son goes for his sword, and while he's going for the sword, Saruman steps on it and snaps it. And at that same time, the king's son slices off his ring finger, and that defeats Sauron. And it's a pretty epic moment. And in that moment, he notices the ring on his severed finger, on that severed Sauron finger, and he kind of picks it up. And does he like immediately hide it because he knows that it's powerful, or does he kind of?
They come back to it
I want to
later.
toss it to Corey here, though, with Isildur, son of Elendor, getting kind of this lucky strike against Sauron here. Is there any, like, takeaways or things that you meditate on in this moment? Because, like, these characters are all deep in the Silmarillion and all of that. Like, they have their own motivations that we know about. But as far as, like, this man and this kind of, like, origin story, are there any other takeaways you have from this moment?
I mean, not really. The one thing that I think about when I see this is like, it was like a stroke of luck that they even made it through this battle. Like he just so happened to be cutting his hand at the right moment and got that ring off, man. Otherwise, they would have been totally screwed. I mean, he was just taking everyone out. He's like a video game, like the final boss kind of guy.
I love that part. I love that so much.
He's like the Hulk. He's throwing people.
When he comes out with that mace and just starts smoking people, I love that. It looks so amazing.
It's like when your brother is level 100 in Gauntlet Legends, and you're still like a 2, and everyone's a 2.
I'll take your word for it.
Jordan's not here to defend himself.
I love the character design of like Sauron and the Ring Wraiths. I think those are some of like the coolest looking characters.
And
that
they
have
didn't
been
have a
around.
lot to go on. Like Tolkien never really described him that well in that form. So it's a lot of that is Peter Jackson and stuff. I mean, they talk about how tall he is and stuff, but not really a lot of description outside of Silmarillion when he was younger and, you know, could shapeshift into whatever he wanted.
Back when he was Tom Riddle.
Yeah, exactly.
God, that's another thing I love.
So Isildur cuts the ring off in a lucky strike, like Corey said. And Stevie, this is where I think the it almost reminds me of a biblical story or like the story of Adam or something. But Isildur just doesn't do the right thing here once he gets the ring, does he?
No, he does not. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a movie. So we all saw that coming. Yeah, he's in the fires of Mount Doom, just standing on a ledge. Camera's all shaky. Agent Smith is screaming at him to throw it in the fire. And he just throws on this awesome smirk. I love that smile so much.
By the way, unless this actually happens in the extended version, you don't find this out till much later in the movie. So,
but that is what happened
True.
directly after the battle. So Stevie, he makes the smirk and puts the precious in its pocket.
I love it.
And I think this happened maybe years or months later in the book, but again, it doesn't turn out so well for him, right?
No, he's just riding a horse around what looks like a pretty, fairly kept state park, and he gets
Oxbow Park.
Yeah, it looks like he's just like riding a horse around Oxbow Park in the morning.
Rohan
And he
State
gets,
Park.
Thanks, taxes.
Yeah, he gets like quadruple arrowed in the back, and it's awesome. And this is where we really kick off parts of the Hobbit where it goes in the water. It's going down further and further, hits a few rocks, and then I imagine this is years upon years later when Smeagol, while he's still part sociopath, finds it right.
Deagle.
It's not like he finds it right when it hits the water.
His like brother, his brother or companion Deagle finds
they're best
it.
friends, yeah. But it's Smeagol's birthday, so he wants it, and Deagle won't give it to him, so Smeagol murders him.
Oh, the fun adventures of Deagle and Smeagol.
Yep.
Yeah, they had a sitcom for a while.
Yeah, that'd be a great sitcom.
I like how Isildur almost has a choice to, like, he can let the ring go and maybe survive, but he chooses to go after it and it ends up killing him. I feel like that's kind of like everybody's end plan with whoever owns this ring is like, they don't know it yet, but this thing is going to kill them.
Oh, yeah.
What Tolkien's trying to tell you is don't follow your dreams, otherwise you'll die.
Never get married. That's the real meaning.
Like Stevie was just saying, it goes from Isildur to a river, then Deagle gets it, and then eventually Smeagol, and then Smeagol loses it, and then we have the adventures of the Hobbit, in which...
How awesome was that shot where he's like in the cave perched up on the rock and there's just that single light coming through?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, his eyes are glowing and stuff.
Oh, fantastic
And with how
shot.
rare Gollum is in this movie, it's especially just like you crave the Gollum at this point.
Yeah.
But I think we go over all this huge, broad history, but I still go back to the moment with Isildur, and I think ultimately what the Fellowship of the Ring has going for it over the other movies is that it has all these mini character studies and shows all these first encounters with people with the ring, or beings with the ring, I should say. And Pappy, Isildur clearly fails his test here and takes the greedy route. Do you agree? Did you like how they went through the characters kind of one by one with this test?
Yeah, and I mean, even kind of going back to Bilbo having it, like, I remember when I read The Hobbit, this was actually my first exposure to Lord of the Rings, and reading The Hobbit, you don't get the sense that the ring is as important as it ends up being, literally like the key to the whole universe. So like, that was like really surprising to me to learn to watch this for the first time. But yeah, from Bilbo like acting all crazy, like one of the scariest parts of the whole movie, to the way Aragorn handles it versus Boromir, it's a really good litmus test for how we should feel about each of the characters.
Agreed. I just wanted to close this pod out before we get to a quick trivia with, did anyone want to mention anything about the Hobbit movies? All right, let's get to trivia. I was really waiting for that. So what's going to be weird about this series of Fellowship chapters that we're releasing is that I will still do the trivia for all of them so that I can name one of you in the very last episode the Lord of the Rings. So
Great.
you don't get anything besides the title, but you can put it on your resume.
That's all I need.
Put it on LinkedIn.
There's no kind of punishment movie stakes? Is there going to be a least Lord of the Ring?
How about
We have to host the
Watch
Hobbit.
The Hobbit.
yeah,
Yeah.
the third Hobbit movie. Ugh. We can maybe decide on the punishment later, but right now, at least in my mind, just being Lord of the Rings should be enough. So
It's an honor.
Yeah.
So we're playing to be Sauron. All right,
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
pretty
it.
good.
okay, I'm gonna ask you this first question, and I'm just gonna say whoever's closest to me geographically goes first, and the further out we get goes last for this first
Nice.
round. And listen carefully to the following sentence. More than blank extras were cast in the epic Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. So, my question is, what is that blank? More than blank extras were cast in this movie. I gotta think that Stevie, you and Mikey can argue about it, but I'm pretty sure you're first.
No, Mikey is.
Really?
Yeah, dude, I'm in bed now.
That's right.
Far,
Doxed.
far away.
Doxed. I'll go first. I'll
Far
say
away.
10,000. I don't even know. That sounds like a crazy number for a movie.
That was gonna be my guess.
Stevie, you're up.
Just in the Fellowship?
Yep.
I'll say 18,000.
1,000?
1,000.
It's 1,000.
Brett, you're
Is
up.
it me?
Yep.
Oh man, I will say 1,000.
Pappy,
We talking about all extras or just white extras? Because it's the exact same number.
Jeez.
I'll go 1,001 extras.
Oh.
and Corey, Kylo. First of all, what would you prefer us call you on this podcast? Second of all, what is your answer?
Corey, Corey the intern. Thank you.
Yes.
I love the intern.
Oh my.
I'm gonna say 2,000.
Okay. And the correct answer is 20,000.
Holy shit.
You guys really should listen to director's commentary.
Here's what we're going to do with this.
That's mind-boggling.
I have a track meet type scoring for this, so it's not just like Stevie wins and everyone else loses. Stevie, you get 3 points. Okay.
Mario Kart score.
Yeah, exactly. Mikey,
Call it what it is, Josh.
Mikey, you get 2 points. Corey, you get 1 point. Pappy, you get 0 points, and Brett, you get -1. And one additional rule, Stevie, you are now in the lead, so you are the ring bearer.
Oh.
What's up?
You have to choose a fellow spoiler man to take -1 point. Very political.
I could carry it for a while. Share the load.
Keep it
Share the load.
I can carry you.
See, I think Brett's gonna be competition, so give him another negative.
Oof. All right, so Brett goes down to -2, a commanding.
Always knew you hated me.
No, that's
gotta
out
be
of
a
pure
punishment
just
on the line.
gamesmanship.
All right, so we're going to end this recording, and we're going to record another episode right after this, so we got to go. But thank you for sticking with us through the first chapter of the Fellowship of the Ring.
First episode of 2020.
That was spoilers.
Spoiler Man here. Our email is podcastspoilers@gmail.com. Now you can check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts.
Wow, I just think it's like an absolute masterpiece. I think it's so good.
Oh, that's
Save
the
it for
greatest
the pod.
trilogy ever made.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, I guess.
I know Toy Story was rated higher, but it's no longer a trilogy.
Well, the Hobbit movie should probably count because they have the same.
No, they don't. They were never made.
Start off the year right, boys. Meat's back on the menu.
3, 2, 1.